My changemaker's name is Joseph. He lived a long time ago and had a lot of siblings, 12 to be exact. However, his father loved him more than his brother and sister. Oftentimes, his father expressed his love not only with words but also with special gifts. This nice robe is a good example of that, enticing a feeling of jealousy and anger among his family. Notwithstanding, Joseph used it to express thoughts of superiority as well. To illustrate that, he used to tell his brother some of his dreams. He once said, "Listen to his dream I had. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed before mine." He had other dreams, including one where the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him, suggesting that not only his brothers, but also his parents would become submissive to him. Well, it's not hard to imagine why his brothers hated him so much. One day, his brothers made a plan to get rid of him. They first threw Joseph in a cistern and later on sold him as a slave for approximately 8 ounces of silver. When things seemed to be very bad for Joseph, he then showed resilience and started to figure out a way to overcome what was going on in his life. He ended up being sold again for an official guard in Egypt and started working for this guy named Potiphar. By that time, things started to go well for Joseph, and soon Potiphar made Joseph his personal attendant. However, Potiphar's wife unduly accused Joseph as if he had tried to rape her, when the truth was actually the opposite. But since Joseph didn't want to disrespect his boss, he had refused to have intercourse with her. Although Joseph ended up in prison, he was entitled to be a changemaker. After some time, Joseph became the favorite of the warden. He was then put in charge of all the other prisoners, making the warden's job much easier. One day while in prison, Joseph had the opportunity to interpret a dream of 2 other prisoners. Interestingly, things ended up exactly as he had predicted. When one of these 2 prisoners was released and returned to his job as Pharaoh's cupbearer, he was faced with a similar situation. But as this time was Pharaoh who had the dream and none of the wise men was able to interpret it. The cupbearer then remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about Joseph. Joseph once again showed how wise he was and ended up gaining the empathy of Pharaoh. Joseph then started to work for Pharaoh and became governor of Egypt, having just Pharaoh above him. While governor, his most audacious plan was fully implemented a few years later by creating a huge warehouse to keep grains, a plan that saved not only Egypt but other regions nearby from a great famine that reached Egypt 7 years after he became governor. To wrap up everything in this brief video, I would say Joseph went from the most beloved son to a slave, where he worked on Potiphar's house, prisoner, and finally governor. Among his characteristics as changemaker, I can easily mention resilience, influence without authority, ethical leadership, vision, adaptability, and thriving in highly dynamic environments. For me, each step of his life prepared Joseph to the next one, where he got more and more responsibility. This story may seem quite far from our reality today. However, I'm sure we can create a parallel with our difficulties. Moreover, I would say the most important lesson we can take from it is how we might embrace our difficulties and overcome it. We should not try to avoid challenges, but go through it and learn from the path. By doing that, we will be more resilient and ultimately a greater change maker. That's all for today.